Hi everyone! Thank you so much for joining us for the Project Invent Educator Fellowship information session. Before we begin, I'll introduce myself. I'm Carrie. I am our partnership and recruitment manager here at Project Invent. I was an educator in New York City for about 10 years, worked in a variety of settings, including a makerspace, so I really appreciate innovative education. But with that, I really want to thank everybody who is attending tonight or watching this session and taking an interest in the Project Invent Fellowship, because especially in the way that the education system is now, we want to recognize all the hard work that educators put in every single day to provide innovative and purposeful learning experiences for their students. And we also see all the hurdles that you're overcoming. So we really appreciate you taking the time and are here to be as transparent as possible and to get you excited about the fellowship. So please, throughout this presentation, feel free to ask questions in chat. We're going to have a question and answer session at the end for any information that I haven't covered in the presentation. But yeah, feel free to throw those at me. And to respect your time, let's get started. So tonight we're just going to go through the program in a quick overview, the benefits of teaching design thinking and implementing that sort of learning experience in your classroom setting or an after-school program or club or whatever it may be, the fellowship components, and then the application process and requirements and the logistics of everything. So to give you a little bit of background, our founder, Connie, she went to MIT and studied mechanical engineering, and that was really her first exposure to getting a chance in the education system in solving real-world problems versus the traditional education trajectory of using textbooks and bubbling in answer keys for standardized testing. And it was really a transformative experience for her. And she questioned why it took her until that college level to be able to experience something like that in the education system, where she could identify problems in the real world and know that she could do something about it, really using that content knowledge and experience to have that application, and not only in the real world, but for a purpose to benefit society in a positive way. And she questioned how that could be used in the education system. And she was able to start an experiment. She taught in a high school in California. And in her engineering class, the students were also feeling the same way. They wanted to use that content knowledge for real world application. And they were able to go to the Vista Center for the Blind and connect with a community partner, Jimmy, who you can see here on the left. And Jimmy lost his sight later in life. And an issue that he had was veering, and a disorientation of not knowing where he was going while he was walking through the city and community. And through need finding and building a relationship with Jimmy and designing with him, hearing his feedback, listening to his story, Connie's students were able to determine a list of his needs and think about where in present day society, there weren't those advances in technology yet that were based upon that need of veering. So they were able to create this invention called Stria, which is a belt. And the goal of the Stria belt was to provide a safe walk home for people who are blind, who face that daily problem of veering. And Stria actually uses direction sensors and vibration feedback to alert a user to know when they're veering unintentionally. And this is extremely helpful. They recognize, especially in city environments, that in public areas where it's really busy, it can get really noisy, that actual vibration was more impactful than an audio alert system. And it was really cool to see how these students were able to develop and ideate this prototype idea and then really revise it based upon Jimmy's feedback, actual needs in the community, and further. So that leads us to Project Invent. Project Invent was created by Connie after the experience with her engineering class. And our mission statement is really to empower students through design thinking with 21st century skills to succeed not only individually, but impact globally and within their communities, and really to develop this idea of becoming the next generation of not only fearless problem solvers, but compassionate, because you'll hear a little bit more. Our community partner aspect of the program really elevates it and sets it aside from other STEM programming, because we really want youth to think about how they can become empowered to utilize their knowledge for social good and to become the next change makers and leaders and problem solvers in these communities. So I think, as I said, Project Invent, having come from a STEM education background, gone through lots of programming, one thing that really sets it aside is that there's a really, really incredible aspect of students learning from real world problems and even further, real people. Because a lot of times when you hear project-based learning, problem solving, it's still just a case study. But through Project Invent, student teams are connected to a real person. So that can come from their school, it can come from an existing relationship in their region, or Project Invent, we can source a community partner through our network of national partners, nonprofits, people that we're connected with in different areas. But it's really awesome to see how that real world application and building those relationships and connections elevate that compassion component. When you hear somebody's story, put yourself in their shoes, you look at the world through a different lens. And not only do you build empathy that way, but these ideas and these prototypes become stronger too, because you're getting that authentic feedback from the person who's actually going to be using this invention, who faces those issues. So logistically, to give you a little bit more information about the Project Invent Fellowship, we really work with schools, middle and high school educators that use tech for social good. And students essentially choose a problem or an issue in their community that they're passionate about, connect with a community partner, and they utilize that relationship to design an actual prototype. So we use design thinking to help students come up with an impactful idea. Educators get trained in that idea of design thinking, using innovative learning experiences to help them really dive into this process. Then there's the engineering tech component where students are using hands-on classes to actually build a prototype. And we do understand that schools and different education settings have access to different resources. So we understand that these prototypes will be at different levels. We, at Project Invent, for fellows, we suggest using an Arduino or a microbit kit to help with that processing, but I'll get a little bit more into that later. And then there's the entrepreneurship aspect, which is really cool because students then are able to connect with industry professionals who will help them do research about marketing, be able to pitch their ideas, and then it all culminates at our National Demo Day X events, which happen both virtual and in person, where student teams get to present their prototype to real people. So this is our theory of change, and we really base the fellowship experience off of this because at Project Invent, we understand that using our curriculum, going through the Project Invent program is extremely impactful, and we base everything off of these teacher practices on the left side here, such as making failure okay, pushing to the next level, being a co-learner, and so on. And they actually correlate and result in the mindsets that students can use to be those fearless, compassionate problem solvers. Because when we think about 21st century mindsets that we look at, that are priorities, we really want students to take things like curiosity, ambition, empathy, and confidence to create that real change in the world. And they're really the key pieces to what makes Project Invent succeed, not only through our fellowship program, but in building these mindsets so that students can go into the workforce, their next step of education, or just be an active member of the community and thinking about how they can create that real change and impact, pave their own way, and be ready for this 21st century. So to give you a little bit of insight into some of the student projects, students have made everything from smart wallets to help the blind detect bill denominations to football helmets to detect early signs of concussions. And it's really awesome because all of these inventions are driven by the problems that they see around them and connecting with their community partners. We really emphasize at Project Invent that the community partners and students work together alongside of each other because we want to abandon that idea of a savior complex, that you need to fix somebody, because nobody needs to be fixed. We all have different areas of our lives that might be a stem of an issue, or we might need a little of assistance in, and that's really where the students connect with their community partners, listen to their stories, and work alongside of them to create the most meaningful and impactful inventions. And you can see we have a variety here, such as environmental projects like the native camera rail, to photograph and collect data on invasive species and pollinators in local gardens. We have our Adapt Play, which is a video game controller. The community partner who was matched with that team had cerebral palsy, and not only did this allow them to have more access in physically playing video games, but when you think about friendships and relationships and building community, it also allowed that pathway for them to have access into the gamer community and build those relationships. We have Olivia here, which was a little watch band that was created for a community partner who was dealing with anxiety. So you can see that they all span the gamut, and student teams can create something and match with a partner based upon their interests, which is really awesome too. And to get into the logistics of our fellowship and how it differs from simply just using our curriculum, there really are 4 components here. So training the teachers, connecting with community partners, sharing resources, and then demoing those inventions. So in the training the teachers, when you apply to the fellowship and get accepted, we have a cohort of educators from across the country, and you will embark in our Summer Institute, which is 4 days of virtual training, and it's both synchronous and asynchronous. And you really go through the process that your students will go through as you implement Project Invent within your classroom as a club, class, however you want to. There's a lot of flexibility within it. And you really mimic the process that you'll create with your teams in design thinking. Connecting with community partners, as I said, if there are current relationships, that football concussion band that I was talking about before, that team's community partner was actually the football coach in their school. So you can source your community partner if you have a relationship or want to work with an organization or people directly in your community. But if not, at Project Invent, we also help match you with a community partner based upon your student interests and the relationships that we already have. Then the last 2 are pretty cool. And this is something that really sets it aside from just using the curriculum. So in sharing resources, that's kind of twofold, which I'll go into, but we connect each student team and educator with industry professionals who really help students succeed in this process through tech support and also getting training and that background in the entrepreneurship side. So driving teams to their highest potential in both STEM and entrepreneurship. And then that leads us to our Demo Day X events, where students get the opportunity to really showcase their experience, their prototype, and describe their path through storytelling in order to gain funding. So thinking about some of the key events in the fellowship, after educators create their student teams, connect with their community partner, and start to develop their ideas, we have an event called Idea Review, where student teams will get matched with those professionals and virtually receive feedback in the early stages of their invention ideas. And this is really a time where they can elevate it, they get challenged as to how they can improve their invention, how it really connects to listening to their community partner, and if there are ways that they can increase its expansion more or even elevate it to the next level. The prototype support, as I said, we train teachers in Arduino and Microbit, and teachers also will receive a kit in coming to our fellowship. But we understand that not every educator has the same background knowledge in using those programming materials, and that is not something that should scare you. We, not only through the cohort meetings and through the Summer Institute training, but Project Invent staff and volunteer tech experts also help student teams and educators with that tech component so that you can be successful with programming your prototype to work. The pitch coaching event, students will receive coaching and feedback to help them create a pitch for Demo Day, And this is really awesome because we all know that you can have a marvelous idea, but if you're not able to articulate it, especially in a market that might be saturated, you really want to figure out a way through research, through developing a meaningful, impactful, hooked pitch, to really get people to invest in it and to get it out there to the world. So through pitch coaching, students will be able to work with professionals to work on their public speaking skills and create pitches for these Demo Day X events. And as I said, they happen both virtually and in person in different areas around the country. And it's a really awesome time where student teams from different schools or different learning settings come together. They pitch their prototypes, get to collaborate with one another and network, and they can actually receive funding from Project Invent and these industry experts based upon a variety of categories. Some of those have to do with the actual prototype itself, but as I said, we're really focused on developing those student mindsets and 21st century skills, and also recognize that people come from different backgrounds and have access to different resources. So we also have funding awards for student teams that really listened to their community partner and connected with them for the most growth within the student team and throughout the process. So it's not just based upon that end prototype itself. And then within the fellowship, there are these additional supports. So I mentioned our community partner matching program, access to those industry volunteers and prototype support. But as a Project Invent Fellow, you also have a program manager from our staff that you can contact, that you will work alongside of throughout the process, that's really there to support you through all aspects of the program, because we understand that some of it may be challenging, it might be new. You're taking on the step of being a co-learner with your students. So we really want to give you all the support so everybody can be successful and not overwhelmed in an already overwhelming education system. We have building grants, so I'll get to pricing in a little bit, but all educators are also offered the option to apply for a Project Invent Materials grant, which can give you additional funding for materials to build the physical prototype. And then we have leadership opportunities. Educators are experts, and we really want to elevate that aspect of this program. So some of our fellows present with us at conferences, host the Train the Teacher models, meetings with us. So we really like to support our educators, highlight them, and give them as many opportunities as possible to showcase that you indeed are the experts. So logistically, Project Invent runs on 2 timelines. We have our full year timeline, which is here. So we have our Summer Institute in July. We have our kickoff event, which just gets everybody excited virtually. Teams get to meet each other. We have a keynote speaker. It really elevates that aspect of community partnership. That's in October. In December, when teams have gotten to meet a little bit, beginning to ideate their prototypes, we have our idea review event. And then really February through April, we offer that prototype support and recognizing that there are those months where students are building. In April and May, we have our pitch coaching, and then in the springtime, this year it's in May, we have our Demo Day X event. And you see here there's an extra piece called Future Fest in June. That is another event that we have in California where certain teams will be invited. Not everybody from every single Demo Day X event, but teams are invited to join us in June. And if you get that invitation, it's also optional. So no need to worry if your school year ends before that. And then we're also offering a spring semester timeline in recognizing that, especially in middle and high school, there needs to be flexibility in programming. If you run on a semester model, if things change midway through the year. So you would still go through the same training as the rest of the cohort, but your kickoff wouldn't be until January, and then you run the Project Invent Fellowship just on an expedited timeline. So January would be kickoff, February idea review, prototype support February through April, so that's kind of the same. Pitch coaching is in the spring as well. And then everybody, whether you're on the full year or the spring year timeline, goes to the same Demo Day X events, which is really awesome. And as I said, the Project Invent Fellowship is open to middle and high school educators, but you don't have to teach in a specific class to be a part of our Project Invent Fellowship. While obviously there are applications to STEM, maker education, and business classes, we have educators who are English teachers, who are art teachers, because really thinking about this whole program, there are ways for everybody to integrate it into their existing curriculum or use it as an elective. And it's really nice to see that students can each take on a different role on the team, and highlight their strengths. Couldn't think of that word. So educators in the North American time zone, as I said, if you're a classroom teacher, maybe you're a specialist, you run an after school club, maybe you work out of a private makerspace or a library setting. This, as a Project Invent Fellow, can be implemented anywhere. It's pretty flexible as long as you go through our training. And then the application this year is pretty basic. It involves just basic information about yourself, where you think you're going to implement the Project Invent program. And we understand that things change, especially over the summer. So it's just your best guess and about how many students you would want to do it with, whether you would do it as a whole class model, maybe have 4 or 5 teams per class. We have educators doing it whole grade model. So with multiple classes, if you just want to start out with 1 or 2 teams, that's where you could really put down that information. And then there is a video submission and a question connecting back to those teacher practices and student mindsets, our theory of change. But since you're coming to the information session, or if you apply by April 15th, you do not have to submit the video. So incentive to get it in early. And program fees. So if you teach at a Title I school, thanks to our generous donors, there is no cost to the school to become a Project Invent Fellow. And that's for Title I. Public schools that are in Title I, it's $1,500 and then per educator, and then for any private or independent schools, it's $3,000. And that includes all of the training, professional development hours and certification, access to all those industry professionals and additional events such as idea review, kickoff, the prototype support, and pitch coaching, and then being able to come to our demo day events. And these are some just metric reports from teachers and students who have gone through our program last year. As you can see, teachers said that it was a really impactful program and the curriculum helped them with teaching. I know I just came from the classroom, so I was always looking for ways to re-energize myself and reinvigorate my students in learning experiences. So these are really great metrics to look at. And we also really try to decrease the opportunity gap in STEM and entrepreneurship. So it's really awesome to see when students go through this program and feel empowered to pursue some sort of STEM or entrepreneurship pathway next, and just think about how they can be real change makers in the community. So I want to keep us on time. If you're interested in applying, applications open up March 1st, and you can find it on our website, projectinvent.org. And then also you feel free to email me. This is my email address, carrie@projectinvent.org. If you have any additional questions, if you want information to pass along to other educators or administrators that you know. And then our curriculum and additional resources are in the library on our website. So feel free to check those out too. And that's all I have right now. I know that was a lot, so digest. But does anybody have any questions or comments or anything? Okay. All right, well, thank you again for taking the time. I know time is extremely valuable, especially for educators. I want to say that we recognize and we see you, and we want to thank you for everything that you're doing for the students right now. And again, feel free, want to be as transparent as possible. Ask me the questions, send me an email. I love to chat, and as a former educator, definitely want to be as transparent as possible. So no question should be off limits. And again, can't wait to see you become a part of the Project Invent Fellowship, and have a wonderful evening. Bye, everybody.